There we go. All right, so we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And of course, there are no classrooms right now. All of you are stuck at home, so we so appreciate you continuing to tune in on YouTube and live. We've got families and classes today from Toronto and Calgary in Canada as we continue to highlight amazing scientists and explorers from around the world. Today, we are excited for a number of reasons. Having some more people join in. Welcome in, everyone. Come on in, guys. Let's just keep your mics muted. That would be perfect. There we go. Of course, the reason we're all here today is for our speaker. So we are joined live all the way in Japan by Dr. Cecile Sarabian. So she is a primate researcher at the Kyoto University Primate Research Institute. Her fieldwork has taken her from the dense forests of the Democratic Republic of Congo to islands off Japan where only macaques live, so Monkey Island, so to speak. So we're going to learn a little bit about her amazing work today, dive in with her research, and then have a chance to ask a whole bunch of questions. I'm super excited. I hope you guys are too. And without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sarabian, and take us away.
Thank you so much, Jesse, for inviting me. I wish such platform actually existed when I was a kid, so I'm very glad to be joining it. And without further delay, let me share the slides. I will be talking about, is that okay, the slides? So I will be talking about primate disgust research, since this is what I focus on, as well as conservation. So I will go back to this later. So let me tell you what I do as first a cognitive ecologist. So the work of a cognitive ecologist is to mainly conduct experiments and observations on animals, as well as to collect their poops. And this is to better understand animals and hopefully to better protect them. So this took me to incredible places and gave me the opportunity to study amazing species. And among the animals I mainly focus on are primates. So who are non-human primates? Well, there are more than 500 species in the world of non-human primates, from the funny, weird-looking tok macaque on the top left of the slide to the Yunnan snub-nosed monkey that you can see on its right, with this funny nostrils and big lips. You can also see the proboscis monkey. Here is an example with its big nose on the center of the slide, up to gelada baboons. So on the bottom of the slide, the monkey that is putting back its upper lips back on its nostrils to actually show his teeth. And this is a sign of threat among gelada baboon males in Ethiopia. So primates, there are different groups of primates. And with this slide, I would just like to remind everyone that we humans did not evolve from monkeys, but we evolved from a common ancestor with all these primates back about 60 million years ago. So we humans belong to great apes, along with orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and bonobos. We have larger body size, larger brain, we have opposable thumb. And in addition to that, primates are amazing forest gardeners. So I don't know if you are aware, but they eat lots of fruits. And those, the seeds of those fruits would pass through their intestinal tract and end up in feces, in poops. In that way, when primates move around and defecate in the environment, they may plant new seeds that would regenerate forests. So they are very good forest gardeners, important ecosystem engineers, if I would say. And where do they live? Well, they live across most of the continents, from Central to South America, up to Africa, the Arabic Peninsula in the Middle East, and Asia. And this takes me to the institute where I'm based, which is in Inuyama. That's where I am currently. Inuyama is a small town in central Japan. And in Inuyama, we have the Primate Research Institute of Kyoto University. So this is one of the first institutes in the world that was created back in the 60s to actually study non-human primates in order to better understand them and to better protect them. So at PRI, we have lots of different people, researchers studying primates. Some of them study primates in the wild, as you can see, the central Himalayan langur on the top left of the slide in India. But I also have colleagues studying, for example, slow lorises, which is this small nocturnal primates that my colleagues study in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam. And this small nocturnal primate is actually the only venomous primate in the world. But in order to better understand these primates, some colleagues also study them in captivity because we cannot conduct certain experiments with primates in the wild. So we use chimpanzees that are hosted at the Primate Research Institute to conduct different memory games or memory tasks, what we call cognitive tasks. So here's a chimpanzee, for example, performing the rock, paper, scissors game on the touch screen. And these chimpanzees are pretty smart. They even outsmart humans on some of these tasks. So if you want to learn more about non-human primates, I would also recommend you to listen to our podcast. We have a podcast called the Primate Cast that is hosted by my advisor, Andrew McIntosh, and myself. And you can learn lots of different things about primates. So let me now bring you to what I study and what I'm most interested about. So you can see on this slide some parasites here in the petri dish. And so what I focus on is disgust. And disgust is basically a three-step process. So in the first step, we humans, but also other animals, would detect parasites in their environment through different senses. It can be sight, it can be smell, it can be touch, for example. And this would then send information to the brain, recognizing these warning signal. Here, the warning signal is a poop, for example. And ultimately, this would lead to this yuck or avoidance response. So this is what I call disgust, and that's what I've been studying in non-human primates. So you may wonder what made me study disgust. So this story actually started back in 2012 when I was doing fieldwork in this small island in the south of Japan called Koshima Island. And as Jessie mentioned earlier, so this island is inhabited only by Japanese macaques. So I was the only human being on this island at the time. And there are two troops of Japanese macaques on the island. And one of them is actually provisioned with grains of wheat. So what struck me there is that when the wheat was distributed on the beach of this island, the macaques would come and eat it. But because of tension among group members, they may fight for the grains of wheat. This may create some stress. And if there is stress, there might be feces that would be defecated as an outcome. So what struck me during provisioning is that the grains of wheat that would accidentally hit the top of feces by being distributed would just remain there. So the macaques would not touch it. They would clean all the sand floor by feeding on grains of wheat everywhere, but the grains of wheat that would hit the top of feces would just remain there. And I was thinking, that's super interesting. Why do they avoid those? And I realized that, of course, they may have good reasons to do so. Because if we zoom in macaque poops, but also feces from any other animal, we can see parasites. Here's an example of a parasite larvae, but feces may harbor a wide range of parasites. This can be bacteria, viruses, but also other parasites, such as what we call protozoa and helminth, which may have different modes of transmission. Bacteria and viruses have kind of direct modes of transmission through contact, through air, for example, but some other parasites may need a few days to a few weeks when they are shed inside host feces. So inside, for example, macaque feces, you can find these parasite eggs, but they would need a few days to a few weeks to reach their infective stage. So let me tell you what I did to test this feces avoidance, this disgust response in the Japanese macaques of Koshima Island. So I basically presented them with 3 different items. One of them was a fake poop. So I always have one on my desktop here, a plastic fake poop. And in the center was placed a piece of brown plastic notebook. So same material, but different shape. And the third item was a fresh macaque poop. And on each of these items, I would place a grain of wheat. So here is an example of an experiment. You can see a female Japanese macaque here. She actually already ate the grain of wheat atop the piece of plastic notebook in the middle. But both grains of wheat remain both on the fake poop on the right and on the fresh macaque poop on the left. Eventually, she goes towards the fresh macaque poop. She seems to show some hesitation in feeding on the grain of wheat atop the feces. So she was hidden from other individuals by these blocks of rocks. And eventually, she went for it. So she took the grain of wheat, she rubbed it again with her hands, and then finally she ate it with her wrists. And what we observed for the 16 individuals we tested is that across all trials, all of them fed atop the piece of brown plastic notebook in the middle. But 6 out of 16 individuals only fed atop the fresh macaque poop on the left here. And 9 out of 16 fed atop the fake poop. So it seems that here the visual cue is important in determining this avoidance response towards feces. But I wanted to push that further by actually testing their motivation and increasing their motivation. So to do that, I switched the grain of wheat by a peanut. Japanese macaques are fond of peanuts, they love it. So when we replace the grain of wheat by a peanut, which is 16 times more calories than a grain of wheat, then there is no more avoidance. All the macaques across all trials fed atop all the substrates. So 16 out of 16 all the time fed atop the different items. So it seems that here there is what we call a trade-off, or a way for the macaques to weigh in what's the cost of, what might be the cost of feeding atop a potential contaminant and the food value here. And it seems that when the food value gets higher, then the avoidance response gets lower. But that's not the only thing I've been testing in terms of hygienic behaviors in Japanese macaques. So I've also done an experiment with pieces of sweet potatoes. So I wanted to see basically if Japanese macaques would be more eager to manipulate and wash pieces of sweet potatoes that were covered with sand beforehand. So you have to note that sand and soil can also contain parasites, as these substrates are also sometimes associated with other macaques' poops. The small microscopic fecal particles may disseminate parasites in them. So in this experiment, I either provided with a piece of sandy sweet potatoes covered with sand, or with a piece of sweet potatoes that was washed beforehand with tap water. And I calculated the propensity for each individual to do so. And in a third, here it was through observations. In a third hygiene proxy, I actually observed the Japanese macaques while they were looking for acorns in the forest, in the litter of the forest. And some of them would spend more time rubbing and rolling the acorn before putting it into the mouth. So taken all together, what I call hygienic tendency here on this little graph is the propension of avoiding feeding a type of feces in the wet condition, and the propensity to manipulate food. And what we realize is that for individuals who have higher hygienic tendency, they show lower parasite infections. So they have less parasites. And this is particularly true, amazingly or not, for females. So females had a higher tendency to avoid feeding atop poops and to manipulate and wash their food. And so they had less parasites than males. Okay, so let me bring you now to another place. And here is another cool primate that I've had the chance to study. This is a bonobo. It only lives in the equatorial forest of the Democratic Republic of Congo. But where I've been able to conduct my experiments is at a sanctuary near Kinshasa called Lolaya Bonobo Sanctuary, which rescues bonobos and releases them into the wild. So here's another experiment that I've done with them, as I was interested in testing a chain of contagion. So I presented 52 bonobos with bonobo poop, and I aligned 6 different slices of bananas from the top of the poop to 15 centimeters away. So you can see the male here taking slice number 4 first, then slice number 6, slice number 3, touches slice number 2 but doesn't take it, takes slice number 5, smells it, eats it, and goes away and did not come back. So here, this male bonobo did not eat the slices of bananas that were in contact with bonobo poops. And that's basically what we observed for the 52 bonobos that were tested. So as we got farther away from the contaminants, from the bonobo feces, the proportion of individuals feeding increased. And this is basically higher for slices of bananas that, yes, were not in contact with the bonobo feces. And you have to note this red bar plot here represents the proportion of bonobos. So 23% of them refused to take any slice of banana. So they approached the experimental setup, they looked at it and they said, no way. So they left, they did not take any slice of bananas. Okay, let me bring you to another place, another species, and here a different kind of experiment with chimpanzees here. So this is a chimpanzee, and I've been able to test them at a research facility in Gabon. And the main question here was to investigate the different senses they would use to recognize and to avoid risk of infection. So I've mentioned the sense of sight and smell in Japanese macaques earlier, but here with chimpanzees, I've been able to actually replicate a study that has been done in humans. So I presented the chimpanzees with this feeding box here, and in the feeding box was placed either a soft and moisty dough or a piece of dry and hard rope. And what you have to remember here is that sticky, slimy, and warm substrates in nature usually facilitate bacterial growth. And that might be the reason why we humans evolved this yuck response for substrates or textures that are slimy, sticky, and warm. So here, this female chimpanzee saw me placing a slice of banana inside the box, but she wouldn't know on which substrate it relied on. And this was either the dough or the rope. In this video, it's the dough substrate. So you can see her placing the hand, and in order to reach for the slice of banana, she had no other way than to touch the substrate to reach out for the slice of banana. So now she touches the dough substrate and she withdrew her hand kind of immediately, and she didn't go for it again. And this is not what I observed for the rope substrates. So if instead of the dough, this dry and hard piece of rope was placed, the chimpanzees would touch it, they would take the slice of banana, eat it, and would have no aversive reaction. So to kind of summarize all these different experiments with primates, I've only given a kind of outlook here of what my colleagues and I have been testing, but there are different species of primates that we have been able to test. And all the species show some aversion for human universal disgust elicitors. So we humans are all disgusted by bodily fluids such as feces, blood or semen, and rotten food. And these primates avoid these contaminants through different senses. We have seen with the Japanese macaques that they use the vision might be very important. With the chimpanzees, that touch might be an important sense. So they all adapt and to this avoidance responses with different senses. Okay, and now I would like to actually touch on conservation. So you may wonder what might be the link between my work on disgust and conservation, but I will explain you in a minute. So let me first talk about certain conservation issues that these primates are facing. So as of today, about half of the primates are endangered. You may know that we humans are soon about to reach 8 billion people. And as the human population is increasing, the habitat of these primate species is also reducing. So some species I study, such as the bonobo, is actually an endangered species. It only lives in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There are only about 30,000 left in the wild. And so if we don't do anything, they might be gone in a few decades. But you have other species, such as long-tailed macaques, for example, that adapt pretty well in cities and urban areas. And this creates conflicts with humans as they may fight for resources. So among some of these issues, there is the pet trade, unfortunately. So on the left, you can see a slow loris on the market in Indonesia that is for sale. This is a big problem here in Japan, for example, where these slow lorises are considered as cute looking and people want them as pets. You may have seen some videos on YouTube of a slow loris being tickled and the slow loris being the arm raised up. This is actually a fear response in slow lorises. And so I would recommend you, when you see such videos of primates with costume or weird looking and in a cage or being kept as pets, to not encourage such kind of behavior. I actually grew up with this TV advertisement in France for a washing machine powder brand that used chimpanzees dressed as different characters. And unfortunately, in 2020, I still see that some TV shows and different ads use primates to exhibit them. But that means that they are taken out of their natural environment. So please think about it when you watch that. Some other issues are, for example, the use of primates for entertainment. So same, when you go to a show and you see a primate that is exhibited or doing things outside of its natural environment, think that this primate may have been taken out of the wild for your own enjoyment. So this is an issue. There are also conflicts, as I have mentioned. So in certain areas, here is a central Himalayan langur in India that forage on crops from farmers, and farmers get angry because they damage their crops. So this is one of the other issues. And another one is bushmeat consumption. This is the menu of a luxury hotel in Kinshasa, selling smoked baby chimpanzee for dinner for $35. So this is another big issue. And one that you may be concerned with is actually tourism, ecotourism or wildlife tourism. You may not know, but there are actually guidelines and rules to respect when you visit primates. So to avoid actually disease transmission, and that's where my work enters into this world, we must keep a minimum distance of 7 meters. But the reality shows that it's on average less than 3 meters, which means that there is higher risk for disease transmission from humans to gorillas, for example. Remember that a simple flu in humans can decimate a population of gorillas. But there are also aggression risks that may play a role, because as primates may get distressed if we get too close to them, they may start attacking us. But just simply by approaching them and invading their space, we also distract them from their natural behavior. And so, unfortunately, social media are playing a big role in promoting that. In our field, ecotourism is also known as ego-tourism, as lots of people seem to go there to take pictures and then later on post them on social media without further reflection on what their behavior may imply. So please think twice before you like or you share, or even you take yourself such pictures, as all the risks, as I have mentioned, are implied. And finally, so just to summarize how I think this world of disgust may relate to conservation, I think in humans, in ourselves, we can use the disease argument or this avoidance response to prevent people from getting too close to primates. I also think that we could use disease avoidance to prevent people from wanting them as pets, as we can transmit disease and they can transmit disease to us. And also maybe, as we are currently experimenting, maybe closing wet markets and stop selling bushmeat, providing sustainable alternative livelihoods for the people who are involved in these businesses. And I think we can also use the sense of disgust in primates themselves and other animals. As I've mentioned, one of the big problems with humans is crop raiding. This can be done by primates, but also by other species such as elephants. So that's where experimentation may help. By doing this test on testing what deter primates and other animals from feeding, we may develop solutions that are based on this natural system of disgust and may deter them from foraging on crops, for example. So I think I'm a bit late. So thank you very much for your attention. These are the keywords you need to remember. And if you want to learn more, you can check out those different podcasts and series. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sarabian. And I'm so glad we got a big conservation message in there, including a lot of handy tips and tricks that you can use, whether you're out in the wild and on vacation or interacting with primates in any way, and things that you can look forward to doing. So with that, we will dive in with Q&A for our live groups, and welcome to our San Antonio family as well. If you guys want to let me know in the chat bar if you have a question, I will come to you. We'll also take questions from YouTube. Just again, let me know where you're joining from. Cecile, what I want to start with is a question we get in pretty much all of our sessions, which is, what is your favorite part of your job? You're getting to do so much in so many cool places, and it's such a fantastic facility. So is there anything that really jumps out that inspires and excites you?
Yeah, definitely going to the field is one of my favorite experience. But as I also kind of get older and settle down, I also just love to learn more about these amazing species that we know still so less about. But what I'm really excited about is now all these perspectives into how we can change the behavior of people by letting them know better about, for example, risks, but also letting them know better of what these amazing species are able to accomplish.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go to Brianna in Ms. Rigo's class. If you have a question, you are unmuted. So it won't let me unmute you. There you go. You're good to go.
Hi, I was just wondering what inspired you to do what you are doing today?
Sure. So I would say that if I take what made me become, or what made me want to become a primatologist, was actually an experience in Congo, in the forest of Congo, where I was volunteering for chimpanzee reintroduction projects. And some encounters with these chimpanzees that we were trying to reintroduce kind of really literally blew my mind. I remember an encounter from far away with a chimpanzee, a female chimpanzee that was looking straight into my eyes for long minutes. And there were just the two of us from this distance. And I was literally thinking what she might be thinking about. So this kind of encounters, yeah, literally drove me to this path. I wouldn't also forget Dr. Jane Goodall, that you may have heard about. I've read some of her books, and I also got fascinated by the chimpanzees and the primates that she was able to study. So I think my love for animals, but also for humans, kind of made me find my path into the world of primatology.
Very cool. Great question. I always love when we get that. Thanks, Brianna. All right. A couple quick notes on that, actually. We covered Jane Goodall the other day quite a bit in a session with Lauren Cecile at the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. So if you want to follow up this session with that to keep the primate research and love going, that would be fantastic. And so it's funny you mentioned this personal interaction with a primate. We have a Toronto class today. There's the Toronto Zoo in Toronto, where I've had some pretty incredible interactions with primates, albeit through a cage or through glass. And so one of the questions coming in on YouTube, Cecile, is what do you think of zoos in general, or with regards to primates?
Big debate. I think there are lots of different zoos. I think zoos can definitely accomplish a lot in terms of educating the public and even protecting these primates by having projects that they may support or be associated with. But I would also say that there is definitely need for improvement. There are some fantastic zoos. You have mentioned, I've never been to the Toronto Zoo, but you have Lincoln Park Zoo in the US, for example. You have Indianapolis Zoo, where they do some also cool cognitive experiments with the orangutans on a shared touch screen, so that the public can also interact with the orangutans through a touch screen. But I would say that I think, unfortunately, the majority of the zoos are not at that stage yet. So I think the zoos that are doing this incredible work of education and conservation, I would definitely support them, as I think we can also learn more from primates by running these experiments at those places.
I think that's a very thoughtful, nuanced answer, and it's something that we're getting a lot more. We're getting the question about zoos a lot lately, which I find really interesting in a lot of our programs. So one thing that kids at home and here today with us can do is look for something called AZA accreditation. So this is something in Canada and the US. It's the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And what it means is that that facility is at the highest possible standard of animal care. This is not a roadside zoo. This is not where animals are going to be kept in enclosures that are way too small for them. This is where there's immense effort being undertaken to make sure they're at a high level of care and that their needs are met and that they get to do fun activities and enrichment like interacting with people through touchscreens, which sounds awesome, by the way. So that's fantastic, something you guys can look for. All right, I want to go to Calgary for Zena's group. If you guys have a question for us, let me just demute your mic. And not letting me demute the mics today, so you'll have to demute your own and you're good to go.
All right, good morning. We were thinking about pollinators this morning for some reason, Cecile. I apologize, but as we were listening, so my daughters had questions about pollinators, but I have a question for you. Are primates pollinators?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I have said that they are seed dispersers, definitely. Right. Yeah, big question. I'm not sure how they may disseminate pollen. I don't think there has been any research on that. But yeah, maybe something to think about or to investigate. But as they are seed dispersers, I would also say that they may also be pollinators. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can say more than that.
Yeah, that's good. That's
great. Yeah, great link.
One of the things I'd encourage people at home to do when they've done this program too is if you've ever seen any like Planet Earth or Blue Planet series, there are quite a few that have whole episodes and touch upon primates. So this is something that would be much more with smaller primates, not necessarily something like a gorilla who would just destroy the plant with his hand, but slow lorises, which you mentioned, unfortunately in cages, bush babies, some of the smaller primates might be involved in pollination. I've seen images of this before, but I don't, as Cecile said, an area of undergoing research, and a cool question. Thanks, guys. All right, I'm going to go to Fawad in Ms. Rigo's class. If you have a question, let's unmute your mic. And it's not letting me unmute anyone's mic today. It doesn't like me. So Fawad, there you go. You're good to go. You're unmuted. Go for it.
How many primate species are there in the world?
Yeah. So if you didn't catch that, Cecile, how many types of primate are there on Earth?
So I think, as I've mentioned at the beginning, there are over 500 species of primates in the world. So that's lots of them, but unfortunately, about half of them are endangered or of extinction.
Yeah.
So that gives you a rough idea of what we are at. And
Yeah.
we are still discovering new species of primates, by the way. Yeah.
If you get a chance, the most recent series, again, BBC, is something called 7 Worlds, 1 Planet, and they have that snub-nosed monkey in China as part of it. It's one of the most beautiful series ever put to film, and it's a really, really beautiful segment. So 7 Worlds, 1 Planet. I think you can get this on one of the streaming services, so do check that out. Guys, we're getting close to the end of the session, so I want to wrap up with a few questions for you, Cecile. What is your next area of research? I mean, you showed all these really cool experiments. Is there something you're doing next, any particular species you're looking into?
Sure. Well, there are lots of things that I'm interested in. So let me pick up one, and that's my current project actually in Japan, where after having looked at behaviors, avoidance behaviors, I'm now more going into how chimpanzees react with their mind and with their physiological responses towards different disgust elicitors. So what are their reactions other than behaviors that are linked to different disgust elicitors? And this can be done through this touchscreen experiments that I've shown earlier, by, for example, seeing how a bad smell may impact their performance on a memory task on this touchscreen. So would they get distracted by this bad smell, or would they perform better because they want to increase and be faster at doing it and being done with it? So this is the kind of next questions I'm investigating.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, Cecile. All right, and then we wrap up with this all the time, and I want to know for kids that want to learn more, and again, we're getting more questions on YouTube and sort of in the chat bar to me than we can possibly answer in one session. So if kids want to find out more about you and your work, find out more about primates generally, where can we send them to keep the learning going?
Sure. So this is on the last slide, if you want to go back later on it. Well, you can watch some of other experiments videos that I have on my website, cecilesarabian.com. You can also find a cool minefield episode that was shot at PRI. You can find this on YouTube, and on the bonus clip, there are some about our disgust research as well. And I think, since you mentioned a few BBC documentaries, there is the current Primate series of the BBC that is running actually, and you may learn lots of fantastic things about primates.
Fantastic. I just linked your email into the chat bar, so for all our live students and on YouTube, you can check that out and learn more about Cecile and her amazing work. Do check out Primates and BBC, it's amazing. And this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for our first presentation ever with you and for joining us so late at night. So Cecile, what we do at the end of every talk is I'm going to demute everyone's microphone, or try to anyway, so if people want to demute their own microphones. And if you guys could all join me in saying a huge thank you to Dr. Sarabian for joining us today. You should all be now demuted. Go for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. That was super fun.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, Faith Poo, our only ever waving of to wrap up a session. I love it. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. Do check this out on YouTube to learn more, and check out our other primate sessions as well. Cecile, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you very much.
Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you all soon, everyone.